It is a pleasure to be here today. I only have a half hour for my presentation, so like Henry VIII with his many wives, I will not keep you very long. But, Agile and Cognitive GRC, managing the benefits and risk of artificial intelligence. As I stated yesterday in the workshop, the modern organization is characterized by navigating chaos. It's changing minute by minute, second by second. Regulations are changing. We've heard from several financial services firms already this morning. But global financial services firms are dealing with 257 regulatory change events coming from 1,217 regulators every business day. It could be a new law or regulation, a change law or regulation, notice of proposed rulemaking. Many of them are enforcement actions. That's a lot of regulatory change, and that's just one industry. I've heard facts, or stats, I should say. I haven't validated it, so I can't say it's a fact. But if you print off the FCA rulebook, they say it's a stack of paper 6 feet tall. Maybe it's just 6 inches and somebody inflated it, but even 6 inches tall, that's a huge stack of paper. But 6 feet tall, wow, that's a lot. You print off the US Code of Federal Regulations and stack it end to end, it's longer than a marathon. There's a lot of legal and regulatory change. At the same time, it's a changing external risk environment, geopolitical risks all around us right now, and we've already recognized that this morning. Natural disasters, inflation, economic uncertainty, that all impacts our organization. At the same time, the business itself is changing. People are changing, processes, technology, and we have to keep up with all that change. Then we have mergers and acquisitions. And the modern organization is the extended enterprise. It's not defined by brick and mortar walls and traditional employees. The modern organization is the extended web of vendors, suppliers, outsourcers, service providers, contractors, consultants, and more. And we don't know where the organization even starts and stops anymore. And we have to keep all this change and complexity in sync. And that's navigating chaos. And that's our challenges as GRC professionals, is to keep all this change in sync. It's more than just keeping abreast with the knowledge about the law or regulation or the risk, but we have to make sure that the business is in sync with that. Because we can answer every question about the regulation, but if the business has changed and the process doesn't have its controls so that an employee wasn't aware of a policy or trained, you're still not compliant, no matter how much knowledge you have. You've got to keep all of this in sync. The physicist Fritjof Capra stated, the more we study the major problems of our time, the more we come to realize that they cannot be understood in isolation. They are systemic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. Now, the physicist here is talking about biological ecosystems, but he might as well have been talking about risk in the modern business environment today. We can't have silos of risk. Just as the panel before us was talking, how do we bridge all those silos? We can't. We need to see these intricate patterns of risk. What starts off with a health and safety risk with COVID-19 cascades into IT security risk in the work-from-home environment, privacy work in the work-from-home environment, health, cultural risks, economic uncertainty, bribery and corruption risks, modern slavery risks. It's an interconnected risk environment. We have to see these difficult and challenging risk relationships. So we're in the midst of moving from a past to a future. A past where we had structures for GRC and approaches, but a future is how do we automate it? How do we make GRC more efficient, effective, resilient, and agile? What's the role of artificial intelligence in governance, risk, and compliance? How do we leverage that? How do we leverage that within solutions like MetricStream's Aspire that we learned about, or their partner Cube out there that does regulatory change management and uses AI for all that regulatory change I've already mentioned? How do we leverage that in the future? But also, how do we govern AI in the organization? Because we have on one side what I call cognitive GRC, the use of AI-related technologies for governance, risk, and compliance. But on the other side, we have AI GRC, the governance, risk, and compliance of AI itself. But before I get any further, let's talk about what GRC is. By official definition, governance, risk, and compliance is a capability that enables an organization to reliably achieve objectives. That's the governance piece. It could be entity-level objectives, division, department, process, project, asset-level objectives, even relationship-level objectives, like in a third-party relationship. Everything has objectives. Like in that third-party relationship, we don't just wake up one day and say, I think we need a new vendor relationship. Who should I pick today? No, there's a purpose for every relationship. There's objectives in every relationship. Are we meeting those objectives? ESG. ESG doesn't start with risks. Not at all. ESG starts with objectives. I sat on a panel at a conference in Amsterdam in June, and the head of sustainability and ESG at Bosch was there. And they had the objective to be the first company to be carbon neutral. And they aimed and worked towards achieving that objective. When we approach ESG, it's not about ESG risks, it's about ESG objectives. What are our objectives on inclusivity and diversity? What are our objectives on being carbon neutral? What's our objectives on modern slavery and things like child labor and forced labor? Hopefully it's zero tolerance. But we have objectives in all those areas, and once we have those objectives, we can understand the risks. So governance is the reliable achievement of objectives at different levels of the organization. And risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So with risk, we address uncertainty. ISO 31000 states that risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And then we act with integrity, that not just to the regulations, but to our own values and ethics and ESG statements. So GRC is a capability to reliably achieve objectives, address uncertainty, and act with integrity. Putting that in context, governance sets that direction for the organization to establish those objectives and achieve those objectives. Governance sets the context for risk management. Risk management needs context. We just don't just do risk assessments for no purpose. Risk assessments have to have context. And the objective sets the context to do a risk assessment in. And we assess that risk, and we come up with our risk treatment plans. We can either accept that risk, avoid that risk, transfer that risk, like through insurance or hedging or derivatives, or we can mitigate that risk. Now, if risk management comes up with this treatment plan and says, we need these 3 controls in place to mitigate this risk to an acceptable level in our risk mitigation plan, and we just walk away, whoever says that those controls are actually implemented and functioning, that's a compliance function. And that's why we need the C in GRC, is to ensure that those controls are out there and effective and meeting the requirements and mitigating that risk, as well as meeting our regulatory obligations and things. So GRC all goes together. But today's modern organization needs to be resilient. And we've got a lot of regulations. We've heard a lot about it already this morning, from the United Kingdom's Operational Resilience Regulation at the FCA, Bank of England, PRA, the EU DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act, Australia's CPS 230, Basel and the Bank for Financial Standards Guidance on Operational Resilience, the US OCC Guidance on Operational Resilience. It's all over. But I talk to organizations across industries. We're interacting with the large global UK organizations right now that's rebranding their risk management department to be risk and resilience. Partly because the organization finds that the business, from executives down to operational management, they pass risk around like a hot potato. Who wants to own risk? That sounds scary. But what business process owner and executive doesn't want to be resilient? Even though they're still doing risk management, they find leading with the term resilience gets more buy-in from the business. And this is a hospitality firm, not a bank. Resilience is a key theme I'm seeing across industries. But resilience is that ability to recover from an event by definition. We also need risk agility, the ability to navigate and leverage our environment, to see what's coming at us, to go through those scenarios, what's developing 6 months from now, 9 months, 1 year, and then how do we navigate and provide the best path forward for the organization? Risk agility and resilience. But we also need to manage GRC in the context of the business, the rhythm of risk, the rhythm of GRC, and through the cycles and patterns of business itself. Several years ago, I sat down with Brad Jewett when he was the enterprise risk manager at Microsoft. And he's now the CFO at Corel Corporation. But when he was the enterprise risk manager at Microsoft, he had this whole approach that I borrowed from him, the rhythm of risk. And it was managing risk in the cycles and patterns of Microsoft's business. And one of the key things he would do is, first off, he knew they had the cyclical, annual different types of risk assessments that just had to get done, every quarter, every, year, things that we just had to do the risk assessments, which were really a CYA, cover your behind exercise. But he made sure that a significant portion of his resources was dedicated to the strategic. And he sat down with executives and key managers and said, what are you being measured by? What are your objectives? What are the specific measurements that is impacting your area of the organization from objectives and key performance indicators? And then you would map key risk indicators and give them contextual risk reports based on the objectives that they were measured by and having to achieve. The rhythm of risk. But risk is also about orchestration. Now, the chief risk officer, and we've heard from many today already, but is really a conductor of risk. There's lots of departments of risks, from environmental risks and health and safety risks and HR risks and procurement and supply chain risks. We have lots of departments of risk. It's the role of the chief risk officer to conduct risk across the organization and to make sure everything's in balance. If you think about an orchestra, you've got the violins and violas and cellos and bass and percussion. You've got all these different areas. And so the job of the chief risk officer is to make sure that everything's staying in place and that the music is being produced and no particular group is sort of getting out of line and too much risk there. We have to be able to see across these risks in the interconnections. So that brings us to the heart of my discussion today on Agile and Cognitive GRC and the role of AI in that. I've defined 6 generations of GRC software. I've been referred to as the father of GRC because on a cold, snowy day in the Chicago office of Forrester Research back in February 2002, I defined and modeled a market for technology and labeled it GRC, and wrote the first couple of Forrester GRC waves, and then went independent. In the last 16, going on 17 years, I've been a boutique analyst competing against Gartner and Forrester. But that first, on that February 2002 cold, snowy day in Chicago, I had a broad vision for GRC. But what else happened that year? Enron, WorldCom, and Sarbanes-Oxley. And so the first several years of GRC Technologies history, it was what I call the Sarbanes-Oxley captivity of GRC, unfortunately. But then we entered the era of GRC 2.0, which fulfilled more of my original vision for GRC. This was enterprise GRC, enabling those second and third line back office functions of risk, compliance, and audit, like many of us in the room, getting them to work together. And that was great. And we focused on GRC platforms. But then we came to the era of GRC architecture. There's not one platform that does everything. I mean, think about it. I mean, even MetricStream, with all of its breadth of stuff, has partners and things. I mean, Cube's out there for regulatory change management and those elements. It requires an architecture. There's best-of-breed systems, there's content and intelligence sources, there's the need to integrate in internal business systems and external databases and things. It became GRC architecture. There can still be a core platform, but integration and connection became extremely important. Well, about 2017, 2018, we hit a point of frustration. And we saw that a lot of the older solutions and platforms out there had a lot of challenges because of all the customization and coding. People were stuck on upgrades, couldn't get to the next version, and we entered the era of Agile GRC. For those in the room from MetricStream history, this is the bridge between M6, version 6 of MetricStream, going to the M7. The M7 platform being the Agile GRC platform going forward. And we saw this across the industry, the focus on low-code, no-code solutions. And we've heard a lot about that already this morning in this keynote. And that's that Agile GRC, the ability to implement rapidly, lower implementation costs, lower maintenance and management costs. That is, the future is built on Agile GRC, which is really equates to that low-code, no-code solutions we've been hearing about. But building on Agile GRC, we have this new era that we're currently in, GRC 5.0, Cognitive GRC. And this is the era of how do we leverage and extend Agile GRC technologies with natural language processing, robotic process automation, machine and deep learning, and predictive analytics, and more. And we're moving towards a future, and I say future because this is on the horizon. I'll be writing a lot about this in my research in 2024, but business integrated GRC. How do we make GRC built more into business processes instead of additional layers of band-aids and complexity? The market itself is complex. There's hundreds of players. This is how I break out the market. The long horizontal ones are things that you should be looking at enterprise-wide for technology, while the smaller boxes are sort of domain department area, specific areas of GRC. And includes areas of strategy, performance, and objective management. This is like the missing piece in a lot of GRC programs. Particularly in the US where I'm from, it's more about CRG, or just CR, or just C. We get GRC backwards. When I interact in Europe, I find that there's a much stronger business perspective on GRC. And there's a stronger focus on governance and business alignment and business engagement with GRC, which is more true GRC. But if we're going to do GRC properly by the definition to reliably achieve objectives, we should be looking at strategy, performance, and objective management. And built with that, risk and resilience and compliance and policy and training and internal control, issue reporting and case management, ESG, third-party, and audit management. But then we have a lot of different department domain-specific things like IT GRC, or what we call cyber risk or IT risk. You got health and safety GRC, finance GRC, HR GRC, legal GRC, dealing like legal matter management and lawsuits and things. And now also the area of AI GRC, which I'll come to in just a second. But good GRC technology should enable management reporting. That it's there at a push of a button in dashboards, real-time insight into risk, compliance, controls, and the achievement of our objectives within the organization. I was sharing yesterday in the workshop that one firm I talked to found out that they were spending 200 hours to build a report annually for the board of directors on all the risk events. Because they had to go through siloed systems and hundreds to thousands of documents, spreadsheets, and emails, aggregate, tabulate, and build this report. The last year they did that way before they automated it, they had risk issues that started 11 months before they did the report, and we're out of control now. That's not managing risk, that's reacting to risk. Another firm, a mid-sized bank, in building their business case for an RFP that they went to, found out that 80% of their staff time in risk, compliance, internal control, audit, security, 80% of their staff time is actually spent managing and chasing documents, spreadsheets, and emails, and not managing risk and compliance. Good technologies can enable management reporting, have a good audit trail and system of record with workflow and tasks, good collaboration and enforcement, and can integrate into the environment. That agile technology that we're talking about, agile GRC technology, should be highly usable and intuitive, not just for the back office functions, but for the front office, the first line, from executive management to frontline employees. They're the real risk owners and takers throughout the day. We're just facilitators of risk management. The business actually owns and takes the risk, and we need engaging, intuitive, simplified user experiences for the line of business. We need technology that's agile, should have a lower total cost of ownership to implement, maintain, manage. Highly configurable and scalable and adaptable, and can integrate in the environment without breaking on upgrades, and is leveraging deep, robust analytics and artificial intelligence to bring us to cognitive GRC. Which brings us to this dichotomy of a relationship. Cognitive GRC and AI GRC. Now, there's two separate but related things. Cognitive GRC is the use of AI technologies for governance, risk management, and compliance. Like what we saw with the interaction on MetricStream Aspire. What you can see out there with their partner Cube out there for regulatory change management. That's leveraging AI technologies for governance, risk, and compliance. And there's significant benefits to it. Think about it. If the FCA rulebook is a stack of paper 6 feet tall or even 6 inches tall, or the US Code of Federal Regulations is longer than a marathon, how long would it take you to read that? Gosh, that'd probably take me more than a year or more. And a machine can not only read that in minutes, but parse it, categorize it, organize it in minutes. Machines are a gazillion times faster at reading regulations. But I was talking to the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at a life sciences firm here in the United Kingdom. Their testing of natural language processing for regulatory change management in life sciences, they found not only was it a gazillion times faster, but it was 30% more accurate. Think about it. If you had a stack of paper 6 feet tall to read on regulations, your mind's going to wander. We're going to think, how's Chelsea going to do in the Premier League this year? What's the dinner plans that we have? Do we have holiday plans coming up? Our mind's going to wander and miss things. A machine's mind does not wander, it stays on task. And so AI is extremely efficient and effective, like in the examples that I said. That's cognitive GRC. But then we have AI GRC. This is the governance, risk, and compliance of AI itself in the organization. It's proper use. Because AI used properly can have extreme benefits, but improper and inappropriate use can have extreme risk in the organization. And so AI needs to be governed. Like we've had shadow IT, now we have shadow AI as a component of shadow IT. I mean, anybody can go out to ChatGPT and do stuff. And ChatGPT is amazing. I mean, I told it several months ago, testing it earlier this year when it started to become the hot news, write my wife a love poem. And I wrote my wife a love poem, and I sent it to my wife in a text, and she sent me back all these little starry-eyed emojis and hearts and things, and she said, "You wrote that for me?" I said, "Well, actually, ChatGPT did." But now she questions anything I send her. But I just recently I have a GRC after hours. You want to have some fun? On YouTube. I have my GRC after hours video podcast where I sit down with organizations, thought leaders and others in GRC, and we have a drink and have that after hours discussion on GRC that talks about the good, the bad, the ugly. In fact, that was one edition. I had GRC Cards Against Humanity edition on one of them. But one of the upcoming ones that I have on regulatory change management coming up next month is on Game of Thrones, GRC Game of Thrones. And it's like, okay, I mean, this gentleman that's coming in to talk about regulatory change management is into regulatory on GRC After Hours, is a big Game of Thrones buff, and I like it too. I love medieval history. I have a master's degree in medieval history. I just went out to ChatGPT and I said, give me several analogies of Game of Thrones and regulatory change management. Wow, it came up with some good ones. I'm quite excited to do that episode. But on the flip side, it can be very dangerous. In May, I did a webinar on the UK consumer duty law. And I asked ChatGPT at the end of it. I already did all my slides and content. And I asked ChatGPT, tell me about UK consumer duty law. Gosh, it got some things wrong, including key dates and stuff. But it also gave me some good ideas. It's like, I'm going to modify that point on my slide and add that point. But it also got things wrong. In the hands of a skilled subject matter expert, AI extends that subject matter expert and creates value to the organization. In the hands of a novice or a lazy subject matter expert, it can create a lot of danger. That's why we need good governance of AI, what I call AI GRC, because we're managing the objectives of artificial intelligence. What's the purpose of this model and this particular use of AI? What's the risk and uncertainty to achieving those objectives, and how do we act with integrity to ensure that we are addressing the issues and things that AI poses as well? But AI can also really engage and help us with both left brain and right brain thinking on risk. Left brain is that logical, structured, mathematical thinking on risk. And AI can come up with scenarios and calculate them a lot faster than the human can. And this is where risk management's been. But I'm an advocate for more and more right brain thinking on risk. And AI, I find, isn't quite as right brain because it's more that intuition. But guess what? AI can cover a lot of little fact patterns and nuances and things. And when it's presented to you, that engages my right brain to even enhance right brain thinking on risk as well. So when it comes to AI, we want to be able to take in a lot of different data points and integrate these and understand these, provide them, contextually to build out action items. Cognitive GRC, GRC 5.0, provides us 360-degree contextual awareness of GRC using artificial intelligence. The standard components of a model, even like an AI model, is we have the input components. And this is critical. Because if you want good AI, you have to have good information. Garbage in, garbage out. And that's one of the risks of AI is people injecting false news and things around the world that can impact like generative AI and AI models. And so we have to have good, solid input. Then it's that processing component of the AI technology itself and the reporting and output of it. So if you look at the challenges, which can also be opportunities of AI, we find that AI is, when AI fails, I think I got trigger happy there. And so challenges and opportunities with AI use. Okay, my slides are backwards here. And so now I think I'm on the right slide. But AI is powerful. And so in that context, it can do a lot for us. But AI is also complex. There's a lot of mystery to AI. But at the same time, even though it sounds like opposites, it's also simple. The simplicity of AI, because it's easy to use. Anybody can go out to the internet now and we have shadow AI because it's simple for the average user to use, even though behind the scenes it can be rather complex. We have issues on productivity, which is also the benefits of it, but does that productivity give us reliable information or is it misused? We have privacy challenges, bias that we see like within human resources and hiring and AI decisions there, the opaqueness and mystery behind models, and potential liability, particularly in the United States where I'm from, where we're the #1 litigious country in the world. We love our lawsuits. But what's the legal liability and exposure here as well? And then we've got all the challenges when AI fails. We've got a dynamic and changing environment that we have to keep current because that AI model might have been built for a specific purpose, but the business has changed. Regulations have changed. Risk has changed. Are we still addressing that properly today? It's more than the model processing component. We have lack of governance and controls. We might have errors in input in processing and reporting. Undiscovered model flaws, misuse of it. Somebody's built that model for one purpose and it's like, I want to use it for this purpose and is never tested and validated for that purpose. Misrepresentation of reality. Limitations in the model that weren't documented or being ignored. And the pervasiveness of AI. But lots of things. Responsible use of AI in the environment ensures that the AI systems comply with evolving laws and regulations, manage uncertainty and risk when AIs can have unintended consequences. We need to meet the evolving ethical and regulatory and compliance standards. We want to deliver trust and transparency on how we're governing AI and its use in the organization. Provide strategic business alignment where AI governance ensures that AI usage aligns with an organization's broader strategic goals, and enable agility. As the AI landscape is rapidly changing, AI governance or GRC practices help organizations be ready for potential future regulatory changes. But the role of artificial intelligence in GRC means that we learn from experience. That where AI uses what is intended to draw conclusions, identifies patterns in languages, can translate languages, solves difficult problems, sees patterns in data that go by us that we can't detect. So some of the different use cases for AI is machine learning. The machine learning or deep learning is a subset of AI that allows systems to learn from data without explicit programming. This includes the ability to analyze historical data to predict future risks, aiding in proactive risk management. Where scrutinize past financial transactions to forecast and prevent fraud, deliver expert risk management insights based on experience and frame to industry guidance, enhance the efficiency of data sourcing while significantly reducing the time required to collect data. You've got natural language processing. The ability to read regulations, process them, dissect them, read like a policy and compare it to another policy. Like maybe I have my IT security policy, I want to look at the vendor's IT security policy and note, they're missing encryption. Why? That's a big issue. Things like that. The use cases are to simplify the interpretation analysis of content and documentation, save hundreds or even thousands of hours automatically mapping compliance requirements to identify compliance overlaps and gaps, compare answers to expected ones to identify discrepancies, document comparison analysis, real-time translation. Then you get predictive analytics and expert systems, which here, the computer systems that mimic the decision-making abilities of a human expert. These systems aid in making informed decisions by providing insights based on accumulated knowledge and data. to quickly identify business units and processes and missing and inadequate controls and discrepancies, to search policies and documents by understanding the searcher's intent, and more. We have neural networks. These are algorithms modeled after the human brain designed to recognize patterns. Neural networks are instrumental in detecting anomalies and patterns in vast data sets, helping identify potential risks or compliance breaches or issues. And of course, robotic process automation, to be able to use software robots and automation to automate highly repetitive and routine tasks. And I've already touched on it, generative AI. Being able to create new data like the data it was trained on. To create policies, to control statements. I worked on one large German firm's RFP for risk management. After they were done with this risk management RFP, they went on and wanted to do more control automation and leverage machine learning, natural language processing to extend and write control narratives and map controls in the environment. And they couldn't find anything at the time. This was about 4 years ago. So they went to their tech incubator in one of their divisions and built it themselves. The next slide's in there twice, so we already went through that one. But the benefits of cognitive GRC is proactive risk management, enhanced compliance monitoring, efficient resource allocation, and informed decision making. And the next slide is not my slide. It's a slide from EY. I spoke at an event in Berlin with EY, and I asked to borrow this slide, and they gave me permission. But this is testing the environment, testing machine learning on risk assessments, particularly third-party risk assessments. And they benchmark the human to the machine learning-enabled subject matter expert. Again, it's not replacing subject matter experts, it's enabling them and extending them. The human, by themselves, within 15 minutes, can identify 5 companies and download 10 documents. Within 30 minutes, that human can review 2 documents and identify 9 unique risk factors. Within 60 minutes, that human can review 5 documents, identify 14 unique risk factors. Within 4.5 hours, that human can create a model of 14 risk factors and business implications. And within 8 weeks, research and develop 4 scenarios. That same human, leveraging machine learning, extends that subject matter expertise. Within 15 minutes, with artificial intelligence, could identify 52 companies and download 884 documents. Within 30 minutes, it could review 884 documents and identify 34,512 risk factors. Within 4.5 hours, it can create a model with 573 risk factors and business implications and create scenarios at a rate of 1 every 5 seconds. Machine learning, with the proper subject matter expert, extends that subject matter expertise. So the value of Agile and Cognitive GRC is to make governance, risk, and compliance more efficient, effective, resilient, and agile in the organization. It helps us become more aware of our risks in our organization, align and work together across departments and functions to address that whole quote from Fritjof Capra, on the interconnected risks of our times, be more responsive to developments in the organization, but be agile to what's coming at us, like that horizon scanning on regulatory changes and risks in the environment, to be more resilient, because when we do have issues, we want to be able to find them, recover from them quickly, to bounce back, and do so leveraging technology like AI, Agile and Cognitive GRC, to be more efficient in our use of human capital and financial capital resources. My contact information is up there. Besides GRC 2020, which is my analyst role, we also have the grcreport.com, which is a news source on news around the world, including UK and Europe, on governance, risk, and compliance. And so with that, I am a couple minutes past my time and into your lunch, so I better step down. Do we have time for Q&A, or are we going right to lunch? I'll be around the rest of the day.
I think if it's okay with you, Michael, we'll use you over lunch and take questions from people then, so we can keep up on the agenda. But thank you very much for that. That was an excellent discussion. Quick round of applause. Thank you very much.